the word terrorism has lost its meaning because it's only used for Palestinians. I don't hear Western leaders and Western media calling the Israelis that are literally committing atrocities in Gaza, atrocities in the West Bank, calling for the ethnic cleansing and the genocide of the Palestinian people living under apartheid even way before October 7th. It was never called terrorism.
The UK has joined France, Canada, Australia, and many other countries in recognising a Palestinian state at the United Nations in New York. But with no agreement on final borders and no actual peace process, it's difficult to know with any certainty what is even meant by Palestine and who would lead it. The last presidential and parliamentary elections were in 2006, which means no Palestinian under the age of 36 has ever voted in the West Bank or in Gaza. The man seen by many Palestinians as their leader-in-waiting is Marwan Barghouthi. He's been in an Israeli prison since 2002, charged with planning deadly attacks in which 5 Israelis were killed. He has always denied those charges. His son, Arab Barghouthi, has been campaigning for Marwan's release and believes his father has the power to unite the warring factions in Palestinian politics. And I'm delighted to say he joins me now. Arab Barghouthi, welcome to Times Radio.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being with us. Look, this interview is going to be about whether your father could lead the Palestinian people, but we should probably begin by asking how likely it is that anyone can, because the West Bank and the Gaza Strip have been geographically separated for 77 years. The governments of Gaza and the West Bank, to the extent that Gaza currently has a government, have been enemies since a violent conflict in 2007. It's a very distant idea, this even the Palestinian state being reunited, is it not?
I mean, at the moment, geographically, and if you look on the ground, yes, it's not something that makes sense to have that in reality. But at the same time, I don't think that we have any other choice. The other choice is to continue with the cycle of violence nonstop, and we want to stop the cycle of violence. And the only way to stop the cycle of violence is to end the occupation. My father has always said that the first day of peace on this land is the last day of occupation. And I think that, I've been talking to many Western leaders and Western media and so on, and they make it seem as if we are the problem. We're not the problem. The root cause of the problem is the occupation. And once the occupation ends, I do think that we can see a future vision of a democratic Palestinian state, as a sovereign free state, and that's what we admire for.
The fact that there have been no elections since 2006, for, of course, a variety of reasons, is democracy still a meaningful concept to many Palestinians?
Yes, I think, as you mentioned, like if you're 36 or under, you've never voted before, let alone, have become a candidate or run for something. I think that the Palestinian politics has been in trouble for 18 years. I think that we need to take responsibility of the division that we have, the shameful division that we have between Fatah and Hamas and the Palestinian factions. And I think it's time to unify the Palestinian people. It's never too late to do that. The prisoners' document that was in 2006 between all Palestinian factions is the cornerstone that we can, and the base for any unifying document that we can work on. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. And from there, we can go into elections. The elections are not only to bring a new president. We haven't had a parliament in 18 years. And how negative that is for the whole political system. Our political system has been dysfunctional for 18 years, and we need to change that. And in order to change that, we need a new blood, new leadership, and that can only be done by elections because we are aspiring to be a democratic state.
So a poll by the West Bank-based Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research found that 50% of Palestinians would choose your father, Marwan Barghouthi, as president, well ahead of Mahmoud Abbas, who's held the position since 2005. Given your father has been imprisoned for nearly a quarter of a century, why is it that he's the person that many still think of as a future leader?
That's a very good question, especially when you say when you think that most voters they were not even born when he went to prison. But the reason why, first of all, he's a unifying figure, and as Palestinians, we are really hungry for unity. The second reason is that he's someone who has sacrificed himself and has said that if the price of my people's freedom is my own freedom, I'm willing to pay that price. And this is something that we admire as occupied people. And the third thing is that he's been very vocal against corruption and calling for the reform of the Palestinian Authority, according to the constitution and according to the international law. And this is something that we really respect. The fact that he's always taking initiatives to bring unity into the Palestinian politics is something that people admire in him. And, you need to remember that he's someone who is very well educated. He holds a PhD in political science. He's an educator himself. And I think that the Palestinian people see him and see his story as a representation of the Palestinian story. He's someone who spent more than 30 years in prison overall, 7 years of exile, 50 years of struggling for Palestinian rights. And this is the kind of leader that the Palestinians want to lead us to a better future.
So we should mention why he's in prison. He was convicted of murder by an Israeli court for ordering operations that killed 5 civilians. He denies this, of course, but many in the West would, I think, probably come from a starting point that a future Palestinian leader should believe in peace. Is he a man who believes in peace?
He's always believed in peace. And I think the fact, he denied to have a defense because he denies the legitimacy of the Israeli court. And I think that after we saw in the last 2 years the amount of lies that the Israeli government is willing to go to in the incidents in Gaza, regarding bombing hospitals, regarding the medics that they lied about, and so on. The fact that they hold, as we speak, 3,600 Palestinians under administrative detention, which is basically not going to court and not knowing why you're there, which is illegal by international law. The fact that they have their court system has a 99.7% conviction rate against the Palestinian people tells you everything that you need to know. And my father's trial was a kangaroo trial, was a show trial. And we have legal teams, independent teams from the European Union, who did a full study and a full review and said that it would be impossible to say that Marwan Barghouthi was given a fair trial. You're talking about a man, they attempted to kill him and assassinate him 3 different times before they bring him to justice. You're not going to kill someone even before you bring them to justice. The judge called him a terrorist at the beginning of the court. So that was a political trial, and the reason why is that they wanted to punish the Palestinian resistance. They wanted to send a message to the whole of the Palestinian people that if you raise your head and above the ground and speak out against the illegal occupation, this is your destiny and this is your fate. So of course they're going to put him in prison. And of course, they said civilians, even though he was never involved in any military work. He was on the record until today. Every single time he was asked that he's against the killing of civilians. And not only that, he brought every single Palestinian faction to sign on the prisoners' document that stated clearly that resistance should be limited in the 67 borders, and also only military targets are legitimate within the Palestinian territories according to the international law. And he's the one who initiated all these initiatives.
No, I mean, I agree. Not many people would call Benjamin Netanyahu a man of peace. So I appreciate it's a relative question. But your father, he has repeatedly advocated for non-violent Palestinian struggle, but he was involved in violent resistance during the Second Intifada, albeit sort of located within Palestinian territories rather than across the border into Israel. Would he still believe in violent resistance?
I think my father has always been very clear that only a fool would choose violence as long as you can get your rights in political ways and in political solutions. He's someone who believes in political solutions. He's someone who was involved in the Oslo Accords. He used to say that Oslo is an opportunity that needs to be given an opportunity. And he has, many Israeli officials and including ministers who were in government when he was arrested. They call for his release. Until today, they call publicly for his release. And that's because they understand, they met him, they understand his intentions, where he's coming from. He only, preserves the right of the Palestinian people of self-defense. Everyone is talking about the Israeli right of, Israel has the right to defend itself. But what about the Palestinians? No one talks about our right of defending ourselves, even though they raid Ramallah, Jenin, Gaza, and all Palestinian cities. And when we resist our occupier, we're called in the Western media as terrorists. And this is the double standard that we need to get rid of. No, my father wants the violence to end, and he believes that political solutions are the right choice right now. And we've been, the Palestinians, we've been the ones who are paying the steepest price for violence, not the Israelis. 90% of the losses since 1948 have been from the Palestinian side. So of course he does not he wants the cycle of violence to end, but he is not willing to compromise on Palestinians' rights of independence, freedom, and living with dignity.
I mean, you yourself said when describing October the 7th that terrorism is a colonial word. Surely October the 7th is something that everyone can agree was terrorism.
I mean, any targeting of civilians, in my opinion, is terrorism. And if civilians have been targeted on that day, of course it is. And we hope that there is legal accountability. And we hope that, international powers can come in and can do a full investigation about what happened that day and after that day. My problem is not with calling things as they should be called. And any violation of international law, we should take it seriously. The reason why I think the word terrorism has lost its meaning because it's only used for Palestinians. I don't hear Western leaders and Western media calling the Israelis that are literally committing atrocities in Gaza, atrocities in the West Bank, calling for the ethnic cleansing and the genocide of the Palestinian people living under apartheid even way before October 7th. It was never called terrorism. What about the hundreds of Palestinians that were killed, including 80 children, in 2023 prior to October 7th? It was never called terrorism. The double standards is what we have a problem with. But we don't have any problem with clarity. And the clarity says that any attack, any targeting of civilians should be, illegal by international law. And that's why the word terrorism for me has lost its meaning. And it's just a colonial word to delegitimize the right of the Palestinian people and the right of occupied people overall and colonized to legitimate resistance of their occupier.
I mean, I want to move on from this precise point in a moment, but you do agree that civilians were targeted on October the 7th?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, no, I thought so. So I wanted to check that. Let's talk a bit more about your father. He has been imprisoned for most of your life as well. I have to ask, how well do you know him? How often have you had a chance to see him?
Until the age of 16, I was 11 when he was taken from us. And then until the age of 16, I used to see him once or twice a month until I turned 16, because under Israeli law, you're an adult as a Palestinian at the age of 16, while an Israeli, even if they're illegal settlers in the West Bank, they're only adults at the age of 18. And this is very important. And after the age of 16, I couldn't see him except for once every 2 to 3 years. I haven't seen him in 3 years. I haven't been able to hug my father in 23 years. But I do know him. I know him because we had discussions whenever I saw him. We exchanged letters. I read every single thing that he wrote. He wrote books. He wrote articles. He wrote statements when it was the anniversary of Fatah or his arrest or something like that. And I know what he's all about and his politics. And what I understood from understanding my father is that he's more than just a political prisoner or even a political leader. He's an educator. He's a great father. He's a great husband. He's someone who believes in women's rights. He's a feminist and believes in more women in power. That's why he supported my mother, who's a leader in her own rights. She's been leading efforts for Palestinian women's rights for more than 40 years. She's the one who founded his campaign for more than 20 years and took it everywhere. So I do know my father. I know what his intentions are. And this is why he's now paying the price for struggling for Palestinian rights. He knew exactly what he was signing up for, and this is something that, maybe when I was young, I blamed him for it, that he chose the Palestinian people over the family. But then when I grew up, I understood how noble he is and how noble this cause is, and the fact that Palestinian people and the Palestinian cause really deserves sacrifices, and he is doing that. And this is something that I will always feel proud and admire about him.
What was it like visiting him in prison? Because one hears from various sources that the conditions in which he is held are not pleasant.
You know, after October 7th, yes, it's been unbelievably bad conditions. I haven't seen him, unfortunately, in 3 years, so I haven't seen him since then. He was assaulted multiple times. One of them, he told his lawyer, which, you know, he saw his lawyer 5 or 6 times, and he was the only one who saw him. In the last 2 years, he was sent to solitary confinement. One of the assaults, he said that it was an assassination attempt because they kept beating him up. They dragged him into an area with no camera surveillance. They beat him up until he passed out. He didn't have any medical treatment for that. They tortured him. They put him in a cell with no windows. He can't even leave that cell. They put, you know, speakers at the door of his cell with the highest volume of the Israeli national anthem for days to prevent him from sleeping. And I think that, you know, he's been through a lot. Whenever I see him, when I used to be able to visit him, trust me that I gain, you know, I prepare myself and I try my best to give him all the support, all the positive energy, and it's always the other way around. I can tell you that I've seen my father under solitary confinement because he was in solitary the first 3 years of his arrest and the
Sure.
last 2 years as well. And I've never seen him complaining. I've never seen him coming out of hatred. He has a purpose, and he's always driven by purpose and always instilling good values in us. And he's always said that he will never be driven by hatred towards Israel or anyone. He's only struggling against the occupation, and he's always a positive force.
Sure. There was a video released of him in August of the far right Israeli minister Ben Gvir taunting your father in his cell. He looked very thin, your father. He looked quite withdrawn. What was your reaction to that video? Did he look as you remembered him from 3 years ago?
No, he looked different, and it was painful to you know spend minutes until I really recognized that this is my father. I was filled with anger at the beginning. I didn't understand how the word lets a convicted terrorist, someone who's an openly fascist and calling for the Palestinian genocide, like Ben Gvir, how he's led to do this and to go to the most popular Palestinian leader, a man who's been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, who's supported by all the prominent leaders that you can think of: Jimmy Carter, Nelson Mandela himself, Ahmad Katrada, and many others, including Angela Davis and others, and how he is led to taunt and threat my father in front of everyone as a pure violation and a clear violation of international law. But then I remember two things. The first one is that my father used to always tell us that they will use the ugliest tactics, and you need to understand that I'm used to these tactics because it was 50 years ago exactly that the first time he went to prison. So he's an experienced in Israeli prisons and their tactics. He wrote a book in how to resist your arrest. And the other thing that I remembered is that this is a normal relationship between the occupied and the occupier, the oppressed and the oppressor. And I do think that Ben Gvir is a perfect representation of what the Israeli government has become. And my father is a perfect representation of what the Palestinian struggle is all about. If the Palestinian people are starved, he's starved. If the Palestinian people are assaulted, he's assaulted. And this is you know, tells you everything that you need to know of what kind of leader that he is. And that's always been his destiny and his fate. And I think that he stood tall in the face of oppression as always.
After the Oslo Accords, your father seemed to hold genuine friendships with Israeli politicians, something that seems almost unimaginable now. Does he still have friendships with Israeli politicians? And how did he manage that? How did he manage to maintain them? How would he do so again?
I mean, he kept communication with all his friends from the past in Israel, of course, through his lawyer. through exchanging letters. And in the past, some of them could visit him as well. As I said, like he's someone that supports political solutions, and as we all say, you don't make peace with your friends, you make it with your enemies. And he sees that the only way to stop the cycle of violence is by ending the occupation, but ending the occupation and moving forward will need to open a dialogue and negotiations with the Israelis. And he's always been welcoming that idea, and that's why he kept those connections and relationships.
Look, finally, Arab, and I appreciate your time because I know time is short. What are his relationships like with the existing Palestinian administration, with Mahmoud Abbas and his government, with Hamas even? I mean, what leads you to believe that he could unify these factions? How is he thought of by Mahmoud Abbas?
I think, his problem is not personal with Mahmoud Abbas. His problem is that he doesn't think that the Palestinian Authority has been serving the Palestinian people for the past few years. It has corruption issues, as we all know, and he's been very vocal about his anti-corruption policy. And he believes in political partnerships. He's a pragmatic leader. He understands that now things are different than before, but that doesn't change his political vision. His political vision has always been very consistent in the two-state solution and establishing a Palestinian state on the 67 borders, according to the prisoner's document. And I think, as I said, like it's going to be the base of his politics. And my father believes that, democracy is the answer, and elections are the answer. He's not calling for any violence internally for moving of power, and he respects that the Palestinian people are the ones who will decide who our future leadership are going to be, either from the president, the government, the legislative council, and so on. And that's something that he has always supported, and I think that he will support elections as soon as possible. And I think it's, we welcome the recognitions and the statement by President Mahmoud Abbas that he will be working for elections 12 months after the ceasefire, and that makes sense to us.
Do you hope one day to stand for election yourself?
I don't think so. I'm not sure. I just want to be there for my father, and I'm waiting for the promise that my father has given to my mother 40 years ago, which is, when Palestine is free and when we're independent, I promise you that we will live a normal life. That's what I'm hoping for. I want to live with my father. I want to compensate for the years that he wasn't there for my graduation, high school, and master's. In every single occasion in our life. He has 6 grandchildren that he's never met before. This is my actual dream, that my father is back, and he is part of our day-to-day life. I miss him, and we really want him back in our life.
Well, I hope you change your mind, because it strikes me the Palestinian people could do worse. Arab Barghouthi, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you for having me.